deceit. Telling the truth is a revolutionary act. It's the David Knight Show.
As the clock strikes 13, it's Friday the 16th of January, year of our Lord 2026. Well, today we have a very interesting story, a couple of bombshell interviews we have from New Zealand, Dr. Samantha Bailey and her husband, Mark Bailey. And they're both physicians, and they have given up a tremendous amount to tell the truth. As a matter of fact, Sam Bailey is the only person I know that has lost 2 careers over telling the truth about COVID. And they've got more bombshell information because the real story about COVID begins upstream with the so-called science of virology. So they're going to be joining us, 2 fearless truth tellers who have told the truth and who have paid the price. And you won't believe what they did to them in New Zealand. And then we're going to be joined by Gerald Celente. We haven't been able to talk to Gerald because of schedules and things like that since before Christmas. And I know everybody is very interested to see what he has to say about trends coming up in 2026, a very volatile year. You're not going to want to miss this. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Well, joining us now are doctors Mark and Sam Bailey, Sam short for Samantha, and you can find their website at drsambailey.com. They put it in her name because although they're both doctors, she was on TV in New Zealand and she started asking some uncomfortable questions of the establishment. And so I had them on about a year ago, and we were talking about their book at the time was The Final Pandemic. And they were pointing out, they were questioning all of virology, which is what they've done. That's got them in a lot of trouble in New Zealand. And so I want to get caught up as to what's happening in New Zealand. And I'd like to get their comments on what's happening in America as the pharmaceutical industry is getting pretty desperate to defend vaccines. And so we're starting to get these narratives about measles epidemics. And I know that they're skeptical of that, as I am as well. So thank you for joining us, Doctors Mark and Sam Bailey. Thank you. Good to have you back.
Thank you, David. Pleasure to be here. And yeah, I think you're quite right. Sam in particular has been in some more hot water here in New Zealand. And last year, she unexpectedly had her bank accounts frozen.
Really?
And yes. And then we had the authorities trying to seize some of our family assets because apparently Sam owes them money for COVID crimes. She's even been charged here in New Zealand with COVID-19. That's a charge that they can bring against you. And anyway.
Well, they use it to lock everybody down, so I guess they could use it to lock you up. So they actually have a charge called COVID-19. What does that involve?
It's for them in the medical world. That's with when they had their fake kind of kangaroo court tribunal about me. That's what they charged me with was COVID-19. Wow. And so but they said I owe a lot of money because of my thought crimes and and they debanked me and I had to go into court to fight it, and that was quite full on.
Wow.
It was really disruptive for several months there, David. But Sam had a good result. She took them into the High Court and it was ruled as unlawful. They're still going after these crazy COVID fines, but they've been told, no, you're not allowed to do what they did, making this attempt to seize bank accounts, etc. So, but it's just, like you say, this is what happens when doctors like us who were once in the establishment, and Sam was a real golden girl, like you say. She was on network television and a real favorite. And then come early 2020, she questioned the COVID narrative and said, look, I don't think there's a pandemic at all. And that led to this. So, and like you say, we put out The Final Pandemic. That was actually now, was that 2024?
Yeah.
We put that out. Yeah, it's couple of years since we put that out, and
you got a new book. Busy. You've got a new book that you just put out. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I guess it's an older new book. It's the book version of my essay, A Farewell to Virology. Now, I wrote this in 2022 because I felt there wasn't a standalone piece, a treatise, refuting the entire virus model, all of virology. So I wrote this essay. It's about 29,000 words, and it's pretty dry. And Sam said, there's no way I could ever make that into a video production, and she didn't. Although filmmaker Steve Falconer did make it into a 3-part documentary eventually. But we had such positive feedback, and we'd reached the point where the PDF had been downloaded about 250,000 times, and we were surprised because it's a very dry technical paper, refuting the virus model. And we decided last year, why don't we put it out as a book? And I included a couple of bonus essays that I've written since that time. And that's sold really, really well. It's really thrilling, David, to see this, that we think, not so long ago, people, weren't questioning this stuff on a widespread scale. Nowadays, this is coming up all the time, and people are not only questioning vaccines and pandemics, but also the entire virus model. So it's been really positive for us to see that there's a big appetite out there for this work, and we're seeing people now in conversation say, yeah, well, I don't believe in vaccines, and then you'll hear someone say to them, well, I don't think that viruses are, there's sufficient evidence for them either. So, we see this is the whole thing. The silver lining with the COVID fraud.
That's right.
Is that it has inadvertently woken people up, and they've gone deeper and deeper into looking into these things.
That's right. We talked about that last time, and it's kind of interesting. It's what we say about government all the time. You may not be interested in politics, but politics is interested in you. And we could say the same thing about virology, right? You say this might be pretty dry reading, but after what happened 5 years ago, I think people need to say, this is something I need to know about. I need to interest myself in this because this was used to lock down the world. And if it's going to be used to lock down the world, we need to know a little bit about it. When you're talking about getting... Yes, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just going to say exactly. It's so important, and I think when people, we can't cold call people and say, look into this. It has to come from the individual. But I think it's really started with there's been a complete lack of trust in the medical system since after what's happened. People have now are distrusting vaccines, and the next question that falls to people are, well, do these things even exist? What are they doing to us? And that in itself, that question, when you answer it, is so empowering because it changes your entire way of seeing health and how to be well. And it's a really positive step. And we see it, there's a great awakening going on.
Yes. Well, that is, and I've said this for the longest time, whether we're talking about the Green New Deal or whatever, it's like, show me your data. I was with a group that had to sue to try to get Michael Mann's data as part of the climate gate thing that happened with East Anglia. And he fought so hard to keep his data secret. Oh, well, that's kind of suspicious. I don't think somebody would do that if it was all up and above board. And so that really kind of feeds your skepticism. And, if it's true, you don't need to hide it. And so I think that's the key thing about a lot of this stuff. People saw this throughout the virus stuff, and we saw the heavy hand of censorship. And as you're talking about before, debanking people and that type of thing. I got debanked in May of 2021, 5 months after we started the show. And at that point in time, PayPal was where I got pretty much all the contributions that we got was through PayPal. So that was a really big deal when we got cut off in the one place. So now we've made sure that we've got a lot of different places where people can support the show. But I just saw that they've admitted that most of these debank orders are, the debanking is being driven by government, not by the corporations, just like we saw with the censorship. For the longest time, we said this censorship is coming from the government. We can tell because of the pattern in it. And then they admitted it. We got the documents, and you could see that it was actually coming from the government. The same thing true of the debanking as well, as we would all suspect. So, it's let's talk a little bit about measles, though, because we've had here in the United States, before we had Trump going to war with the world and changing the subjects every other day, they were starting to push back against some of the minor changes that are being made at HHS by RFK Jr. I'm glad to see some of these changes. They've reduced I don't know if you're familiar with what's going on in the U.S., but they've reduced the vaccine count that they recommend, that they're really virtually mandating for children by the pressures that were put on to pediatricians. They would offer both carrots and sticks to make sure that they would get the kids vaccinated. And so there were penalties associated with the reimbursements they would get from the insurance companies and things like that. So they have pulled back some of these. And we go back and look at the vaccine schedule. I was really surprised to see how many times they would repeat these vaccines. Some of them were given 4 and 5 times during childhood. And so they pulled back the frequency and the number of vaccines that are recommended, and they've also pulled it back to say there's not going to be any penalty if you don't follow the recommendations. So that's positive stuff, but that's really got the vaccine industry fired up. So they were coming back with measles, and so I went to the CDC, and I thought it was kind of interesting to see how many cases they had and how many so-called outbreaks that they'd had, because they put a lot on this South Carolina, and there was another one in Georgia, but South Carolina they were really focused on just a couple of months ago. And they were giving us narratives saying that, had 100 kids or whatever. And I said, yeah, but you notice that they're not saying anybody is hospitalized and nobody has died, even though we had in Texas, I think it was in 2024, they had 2 cases that they claimed had been fatal. When Children's Self-Defense went in and investigated, they found that was not the cause of death of these. So that's been disputed, and I think very effectively disputed. But they never even claimed that anybody died or was hospitalized out of these cases in South Carolina and Georgia. And I thought it was kind of interesting, Mark and Sam, that when they define an outbreak, that is more than 3 cases that are connected. And so they said that 69% of the cases in 2024 were outbreaks, and but then that meant that 31% of the cases were not. And so it's like, that's kind of strange. If they're telling us that this is the most contagious virus out there, how is it that you're getting all these situations where you have 1 person or 2 people that have it and nobody else has it? And so that raises a question, I think, in my mind at least. What would you tell the audience? I know we talked about this last time you were on, we talked about measles, but kind of give us a refresher course about your position about measles and what you think is going on here, because a lot of people have had an experience with it where most of us in the U.S. had measles at my age. And so the question is, why did a lot of us have measles back then? Why is it so many fewer right now? And why did it appear like it was something that was being passed on to people? You want to speak to that?
Yeah, sure. And David, this comes down to the narrative that the media present. And it's a complicated thing because, like you say, people will contact us and say, hey, there's an outbreak in this city in the United States, and they're all unvaccinated kids, and some of them are really sick. And you have to really peg things back to the whole historical aspects of measles and the basic science. So like you, we would say, first of all, investigate what do they mean by an outbreak. And we find that these days there might be 2 cases and they're splashing that in the headlines saying outbreak. Now, this is something historically that would have never made national news, let alone caused a murmur in the local community. Nobody calls that an outbreak, but they've changed the language, they've changed the definitions. Mm-hmm. Then we have the issue with what is a case. Now, historically, they didn't have any tests, any laboratory tests, so it was all done clinically. So a kid would present with a rash and a fever, and it was up to the doctor to decide what that was. Now, Sam and I used to be in the system, and we were trained up in that system, and they'll tell you all of these things like, oh no, a doctor knows measles because there's Koplik spots in the mouth, the special sign that you'll see, all this kind of stuff. And then you look into the research and you find out that these case definitions are so woolly. Most of them don't have these special features. The rashes all look very similar. How do you distinguish between hand, foot, and mouth? Measles, chickenpox, monkeypox, smallpox. They're all just degrees. They're all just similar presentations, coughs, fevers, runny noses, and rashes. A lot of it comes down to what the doctor decides. Then we have this problem of whether the child has been vaccinated or not. So a lot of the time, the child's been vaccinated, you're not allowed to make the diagnosis. You have to look at something else because that doesn't look good. And at other times, there's a special message that goes out to the medical community, and there may be incentives to report the cases. You need to suddenly start reporting. So we have to think that these are often artificial situations that we're seeing. Nothing is actually changing in the community, but it's the way it's being presented, the way it's being tested, the way things are being looked for. So, yeah, we know historically, like you say, that many of us last century were given the diagnosis of measles. By definition, it was a very mild condition. And a lot of kids used to celebrate getting it because it meant that they got the week off school because of this crazy notion that people thought it was a contagious entity. So for a child, it was a pretty exciting time. You got the measles. It was a guaranteed week or two off school while you had the rash, etc. So, but these days, as you know, we're being presented with the story that the measles is deadly. It's so, oh my goodness, imagine if your child got that. And we're not actually seeing cases or claimed cases where children are dying outside of these very small number of events and incidents where on deeper inspection, on actual looking at the medical records, we find out that these kids were sick for other reasons. And someone happened to label them or said that they had a co-infection, in quotes, with measles at the time. And then the media pick up on it and say, child with measles dies. But, it's clear to us when you look at the medical records that the child was sick for other reasons. And
that's what happened in Texas with Dr. Brian Hooker and others, I agree, yeah. And so there is, as you point out, sometimes there's an incentive to not report it as measles. Sometimes there's an incentive to report it as measles. And it's very similar to what we saw with COVID. The federal government was giving a bonus to doctors if they would do a clinical diagnosis, point at somebody and say he's got COVID. So you get I think it was $13,000 if I remember correctly. And then towards August of 2020, you had the American Hospital Association say, wait a minute, you're telling us now that you need some kind of a PCR diagnosis that's here? You told us at the beginning those didn't work and you didn't have enough of them. And you told us just to do a clinical diagnosis and now you're not paying up. So that kind of blew the cover because there's no no honor among thieves, I guess. And so people would start to see things like that happening. And we realize now that that's not just limited to COVID. This is the type of thing they've been running for quite some time, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think what is also interesting is, what Mark was saying with the classification. A serious pathogen, you only need one case for it to be defined as an outbreak. So that's what happened. We saw in COVID in New Zealand where there was one case and the whole nation went into lockdown.
Just to be clear, when Sam says pathogen, that's in quotes. We don't want people to think
that's on their terms.
We pathogenic is a word, means disease causing. Pathogen, they took this term last century and made it up and said, oh, that's microbes, bacteria and invisible or imaginary viruses. But as Sam says, in their system, they will say that you can have one case, and if it's a serious one, they say that's an outbreak. We now have an outbreak, folks. And in countries like New Zealand, they'll shut down the entire country.
Literally, that's what happens.
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy. And I think that's one of the key things that many of us don't realize is they haven't really done real science. I'm sure you addressed that in your farewell to virology. They didn't do real science to isolate a particular thing like a virus or something, and then correlate that to the illness to say, well, we got this thing that we find in the people who are sick and we don't find it in the people who are well. And if we take that and transfer it to the people who are well, they get sick. That's what everybody thinks is happening, but that's not what's happening, right?
Yeah.
David, there is a hidden history behind measles. And when Sam and I trained as doctors, they didn't tell us about this, and they presented very selective information. And they said that there was some monkey experiments that were done early last century that proved that measles was highly contagious. Now, that was very disingenuous because when we actually dug into the history, and I've got a note here, researchers like Daniel Reuters, our Australian colleague, have done magnificent work digging up all of these old studies. There were a whole lot of studies in the 1800s, and people would be shocked if they knew what they actually did, because you'd never get this stuff approved these days past the ethics committees. So they were taking children and even young ones like babies and trying to give them measles.
Yeah.
They were doing everything they could. So a researcher would locate a case of a kid that was unwell with what was said to be measles. They'd quickly take snot and tears and even blood from these kids, and then they'd go and try and infect other kids. Now, often they'd just squirt it straight up their nose, or expose their eyes, or just put it on their skin. Sometimes they would actually make wounds to their bodies and introduce this material, this disease material. They would also inject it straight into other children. So they'd take blood from one child said to have measles, inject it into another.
Wow.
All failures. Didn't work. All they could induce were these local kind of reactions. And they said, because they were so obsessed of showing that there was some sort of contagious element, they said, oh, maybe our techniques are insufficient. There were even techniques where they brought monkeys in and they exposed them to sick humans, and the monkeys didn't get sick. So eventually they resorted to taking blood from people said to have measles and injected it into these monkeys, these rhesus monkeys and other small monkeys. Some, not all, some of the monkeys developed a little bit of a rash around the injection site and a fever. And then they said, well, that proves it. There was a study, 1911, Anderson and Goldberger, and this is the one they'll cite of saying, well, that's when they showed it was contagious. Now, the rest of us looking at this are saying, this is outrageous, because the WHO and the CDC, they say that measles is an airborne disease. It's transmitted via aerosol, and that just being in the same room with someone is enough to cause you to come down with the case of the measles.
Yeah.
Clearly, the research never showed that. They had to do these preposterous experiments where they injected animals with human blood. And we know, David, that will cause a reaction because, and even the human experiments they did, sometimes you'll get a reaction because the blood is not cross-matched appropriately. So you don't need a virus to cause these increases in temperature. And none of them recreated the same illness, the classic illness. So completely, this is all hidden. And
well, they did the same type of thing. I learned this from you. They did the same type of thing like from 1940-something and 1980-something, the UK cold house, where they were doing everything they could to transmit colds to people and failed in the same way that you're talking about what they did in the 1800s.
Sam has a great video on the common cold unit that people can watch, and it really amazing. Yeah, this is where they invented coronaviruses, David. This is where it comes from. Is that, in humans, because they said, we don't really know what's going on here, but we think it must be viruses. 40 years they operate this facility in England, and out of it comes nothing but virology mythology, where they said that they found about a couple of hundred viruses that seem to cause common colds. And again, we looked at those experiments and we were shocked because the vast majority of them completely failed. And importantly, Daniel Reuters has gone further with his book, Can You Catch a Cold?, where he documents hundreds and hundreds of these human transmission attempts with flus and colds, and they fail. The mode is that most of the experiments completely fail. And this is like extreme. This is people coughing in other people's faces, living in the same room for several days at a time, and just this complete inability to make the other person sick.
And transference of body fluids like, mucus and things like that as well, right? But it seems like, they come up with the name coronavirus. Maybe it was based on circular logic. Virology, maybe that was it, huh? I don't know. But
yeah, well, the story there is, yeah, it's just incredible because, yeah, the coronavirus stuff just pops up all the time. But essentially, it was a exercise where a virologist gave a tissue sample to an electron microscopist, June Almeida, in the 1960s, and basically said to her, "There's a virus in there. Can you find it?" And she just pointed to something and said, "I think that's it." And then forevermore,
That's what it is.
if people see this, they say that's the coronavirus or a coronavirus.
Wow.
Yeah, point and declare, we call it.
That kind of reminds me of the etymology of the term computer bug. They had a a woman who they had a malfunctioning machine. They opened it up, there was a bug in there. She said, "Yeah, that was it. It was a bug." And so after that, we all talk about having bugs inside the software, but it's kind of that same sort of thing. We got an inkling of this as everybody was talking about rushing this vaccine into deployment. And I guess that's a good word since it was kind of a military operation. And so they were talking about, we got to speed this up. He had a lot of true believers out there and said, "I'll volunteer. Let me have this vaccine, and then you can expose me to it. And we can short circuit this," because the way they would do the testing, that was kind of a harbinger of all this stuff. The fact is that they don't expose people to the disease that this is supposed to prevent. Right. So when somebody is getting a therapeutic, they take somebody who's already sick with the condition and they give them this therapeutic and they have a control. So they have people who get a placebo and people get the new treatment. And they look to see, first of all, the first phase is, does it, kill people? So they have just a very small group of people and to check to see if there's really obvious immediate damage that's done. And then if it clears that hurdle, then they start with the phase 2 and phase 3 tests, where they start to give people that already have this condition to see if it makes a little bit of a change with them. And they look at the efficacy of it based on the difference between the control group and the people who got the drug. But they say with a vaccine, we can't do that. It'd be unethical if this stuff doesn't work, it'd be unethical to give this disease to somebody, except that's what they were doing in the cold house. That's what they were doing in these other virology experiments you're talking about in the 1800s. And so in a sense, if they were to do that, they call that a challenge test. If they were to do that, it would show people that there was nothing there in the first place, I think. That's maybe another reason they don't do that, because there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of ethics in terms of preventing them from doing a lot of other things. So it may be that they're just trying to hide cover for virology. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah.
Yeah, David, it's really interesting you mentioned that because Sam and I both used to work in clinical trials.
Yes.
Yeah.
And these were in big pharma sponsored human trials.
We were in the dark side, David. True dark side.
We were trained up in that craft.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that really struck us when we were involved in that work, and you'll see that in some of our presentations, like recently Sam did one on vitamin K injections in the newborn, and that is this numbers needed to treat thing, where they're saying, "Oh, we can't do the trial because the numbers need," well, they don't say that, they'll say because the size of the trial would need to be so big. And you're like thinking to yourself, why would you need a trial that size for something that's supposedly really effective? Because they're saying we need like 200,000 people in the trial to show that it's effective. That at that point it's absolute ridiculousness, because the numbers needed to treat, even on their own terms.
You can maybe explain what that means.
Yeah, so that's the numbers you would need to give a therapy to prevent one event, not to save a life. And it's whichever event you choose. So the event might be sneezing. So you might say, well, we've got this new therapeutic and the numbers needed to treat 900 and it will prevent one sneeze. So clearly, telling a person, hey, I've got this treatment that prevents sneezing, a person might say, oh, great, I'll take that treatment. If you told them 900 people need to take this medication and one will get the benefit, which is not sneezing, 899 will not get the benefit, and they'll be exposed to all of the potential adverse effects of that medication, and they won't tell you those because they might not have looked at them all. So this is the preposterousness. And like you say, they'll just say, oh, we can't do the trials because of this reason and that reason. And that should be a red flag to people right away. as to the fact that this is not an effective treatment, and the only way it can work is through manipulation of the narrative. And it's a big thing, and it's what pharmaceutical companies really rely on these days. And with vaccines, which we're talking about here a lot, the narrative is completely fraudulent, where they're mixing all sorts of things of mortality rates and incidents and who's vaccinated and who's not. All of these things, they manipulate the statistics. It's outright fraud. I mean, Sam and I have exposed this stuff in some of our presentations, looking at the CDC's own data and what they classify as vaccinated versus unvaccinated. And they will do things like they'll classify someone as unvaccinated if the person knows that they've been vaccinated but couldn't remember the date of the vaccination. And in the CDC's world, that goes into the unvaccinated category. Now, that's preposterous. The person clearly has been vaccinated, and it's just manipulating the statistics to produce a certain narrative.
In the case of measles too, when I remember back, I used to work as a GP for a while, general practitioner. I remember seeing the only patients I ever saw with a true measles type rash, the really classic looking one, they were all drug reactions. There were people that had had antibiotics, and then a week later they developed this classic measles rash, and that was the only ones I ever saw. And it's funny how, again, this is all crafted. If I'd said that I hadn't asked about the drug history, I would have called it measles and classified it as, and you realize how much this problem keeps popping up, doesn't it, with the
Absolutely, and some of them are vaccine reactions as well. But of course, if you've had the vaccine, you're not supposed to have the disease. And I know that critics will say yes, but they have tests to differentiate that stuff, antibody assays and stuff. But we've looked into all of these assays. They're dubious in themselves on their own terms. So all of it is, to protect this narrative. But what I think is really positive, David, is that clearly people, got wised up to the COVID-19 narrative and went off that one. So now we see them relaunching other narratives. And because measles is not even familiar to people anymore, because one thing Sam and I point out is that by the 1980s, when we were kids, most people, infectious diseases, in quotes, weren't even a thing. And so many people were turning away from vaccines and could not see the need for them. Kids had generally got really, really healthy. Childhood mortality had fallen away to almost nothing. And then, of course, they had to relaunch things in the 1990s with these fear campaigns that suddenly these diseases like chickenpox and measles, which were joke illnesses to the physicians of old, who were often dealing with much more serious problems, suddenly the narrative changed, and we were told that these are incredibly serious diseases and all children need to be vaccinated. And that's why we saw the massive increase in the childhood vaccination schedule from the 1990s through to the present day.
That's insane.
As you've noted, it's...
What are the numbers of vaccines that they've set up in New Zealand for kids? From birth to, let's say, I guess it was 16 or something like that. They've got like 72 here was what it was until just recently. What do you have in New Zealand?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm not actually sure of the 100.
Yeah, ours is not far off. We don't have quite the same number, but it's up there. And it's the big change has been, as I say, the increase since the 1990s. Back then in the 80s and 70s and 80s, there were only a handful that kids would be given and not many shots. But like the United States, the number of shots went up and up and up. And then it started including things like hepatitis, which even on their own terms, kids are not supposed to get. And, up to this point today where, like you say, a child might get almost 80 shots by the time they're a teenager in a country like the United States. Now, I think there have been some positive moves to try and reduce the number of recommended vaccines on the schedule, but we have to keep in mind they're all fraudulent.
Yes.
None of them are required. So
I agree.
We need more. And some people are saying, well, RFK Jr. is doing his work. He's in there Hard for us to know how that's going to pan out, because obviously people can still get all of these vaccines, and when they take their children to the doctor, most doctors are still in that mode of thinking where they think all vaccines are required and that you give as many as you can, etc. So whether that pans out with any positive influence, I'm not sure. We can see on the ground what is positive is that more people are turning away from vaccines at the moment than going in the other direction. So countries like New Zealand, it's definitely dropped off, and a lot of parents now are saying no to the whole vaccination schedule.
Good. And is there a lot of pressure on parents? What is the situation with parental consent there in New Zealand?
It's not, so we don't have the same situation like California has, where children are required to have all the childhood vaccinations in order to go to school and things. There isn't sort of mandatory things like that in place. But in saying that, if you go to a university, like a college, and you go into particularly a health-related career, you're expected to have all of the vaccines plus, So Mark has a funny story where he nearly didn't become a doctor because he was very on the cusp of not taking.
Yeah, I got identified as a medical student.
He was red flagged.
Yeah. I hadn't had all the jabs, and I was so close not to having them. And unfortunately, I was gaslit by some of the physicians in the hospital where I was working. And when I raised a few concerns, they said, "Oh no, it's all discredited anti-vaxxer stuff." And they said, "Don't even bother looking at that stuff because there's been a lot of analysis, etc." And so I came close to not having many of the vaccines when I was as a medical student, but unfortunately, that pressure they said I couldn't progress basically into clinical medicine. And unfortunately, I had a few of the vaccines back then, but luckily no adverse events.
It's kind of a loyalty test, isn't it? Are you loyal to pharma? If not, we can't put you in the medical field if you're going to question what pharma is doing. It's kind of interesting how they focus on medical students like that, and doctors and nurses. Yeah.
Exactly. It's opticians, it's every physios across the board, and you're right, it totally is. It's this test, and you realize I didn't kind of appreciate it until what happened after 2020, where when you start questioning vaccines is standing on a landmine, but questioning germ theory is like, you cannot be in the club if you think like this. It's real. You'll be ostracized.
Yeah, and they don't want any discussion about it. That was what was terrible, was our training in the medical system about vaccines was essentially based around how many vaccines kids should have, like, memorizing the schedule, and how to deal with so-called anti-vaxxers. And they were presented as, these deluded people who were making money out of, I don't know how you make money out of being an anti-vaxxer.
We know how you make money selling vaccines, but to tell people not to buy it, there's no money in that, really.
While Sam's bank accounts were being frozen, we were looking up Pfizer going, my goodness, they made $100 billion out of that one product. And we couldn't quite work out how the money is in being against the vaccines. But we were told, that was what we were told, David. We were told that these anti-vaccine people are sophisticated operators who, make a lot of money. And we didn't even look back then at the science. They didn't say to us, well, here's the figures or here's the original papers. They didn't want you looking at that. So essentially, and we found out since then that the medical schools, the academia, the scientific journals are largely controlled by the pharmaceutical industry and the medical establishment. It's in their interest to train the doctors up. And Peter Gotche has, his book, Deadly Medicines and Organized Crime, really exposes this.
It's redundant, right?
The narratives are set by the industry. So there'll be these catchphrases, safe and effective is one. That came out of the thalidomide era. And they'll have all of these things that doctors go around saying. And the doctors think that this comes from honest, hardworking doctors, and the origins of these catchphrases go back to the pharmaceutical industry and their marketing gurus. And unfortunately, it permeates the whole medical world to the point where it's just taken for granted and believed.
Do you know, really quickly, I can't remember if I told you this last time, David, but I remember so vividly. I graduated in 2005 from medical school. And so around 2003, I think it was, we had our pediatric rotation, and they spent a morning with us teaching us how to deal with anti-vaxxers. That was the whole thing. And they said, I remember it because I was staunchly pro-vaccine at this point, and that they would say they'll come at you and they'll have lots of paperwork. And don't worry about looking at any of it. What you need to focus on is that they've refuted all this, that this has all been, it's nonsense what they're telling you. They're in a cult and this is what they believe, and you have to kind of talk them out of it. And it was this really patronizing kind of talk down. I'm like, oh yes, doctors, we know best. And now I think, oh my gosh, they're just training you up to that this is a really evil kind of and I don't know if that's still going, but that's definitely what I had. Yeah.
Well,
and this is important.
I remember in the summer of 2020 when they were talking about rolling out this vaccine, and they had already war-gamed how they were going to psychologically manipulate people. Yale had done a study, and they had about a dozen different categories of things that they could use, and they'd actually done double-blind testing, unlike the vaccines. So they actually tested the psychological stuff in the way that you would think that they would test a drug or something, but they had a control group that didn't get the narrative, and then somebody else that they would use that argument on to see if it was effective. And it was all the kind of stuff like, you need to do this for your neighbor. This is like the moonshot. You need to trust science. And all the narratives that we were sold, those were all tested with focus groups and with control groups. And that part of it was very scientific. That was the only part that really had any science with it, was the behavioral science. And it's kind of interesting because they create this kind of this science fiction world with viruses and all the rest of the stuff. And it is an interesting and very complete universe, but of course, J.R.R. Tolkien did that with Lord of the Rings. He had a very intricate universe that he created, but it was all fake. So just because it's intricate doesn't mean that it's true. And the good science fiction is when you don't have logical gaps in the universe that you created, right? And that was what I was seeing in 2020. When I'm watching this closely, it's like, wait a minute. What they're telling you doesn't make any sense at all. For example, all the stuff that your mask doesn't protect you, other people's mask protects you, all that kind of stuff, which has been the long-term narrative for the vaccine. And that was a tip as to where they were going with the vaccine. But, that type of stuff, they had all these different things that were just illogical that they were telling people that made absolutely no sense, even if you believed the virology. What they were telling people didn't make any sense. It didn't hang together.
No, and that astounded us too, David. In New Zealand, we had these really peculiar things, like the government introduced this level system and this traffic light system. And they said, hey, look, when there's heaps of cases out there, we're going to shut down the whole country. It goes into red light, etc. And then when there are not many cases, we can open things up again. This is during the COVID era. And then they just did the complete opposite in front of everyone. So we have no cases. We literally had no cases, even on their terms, and they shut New Zealand down and said, you can't leave your house. And then later on in 2022, when they allowed the RAT test, the rapid antigen test, to flood out there, of course, people just started testing at home, and the number of cases went through the roof. And then they just said, oh, it's time to open up, It was completely illogical. It made no sense on their own traffic light level system. And Sam and I, of course, had refuted the entire notion that there was a SARS-CoV-2 virus or that COVID-19 represented some sort of new illness. It was all circular reasoning. But aside from that, we thought the people who bought into the narrative, surely at this point they're going, this makes no sense, But for the people who really buy into the narrative, I think they just take the bits that suit them and discard the bits that don't suit them.
That's right.
And
I mean, we could see that
it's a wider problem.
I don't know how it was in New Zealand, but here, if you went to a restaurant, for example, you had to wear a mask in order to be seated at a table. But once you got seated at the table, you could take the mask off. And then if you need to get up to go to the bathroom, you could walk through the restaurant without a mask on. It was all okay. And it's like, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. And I had a couple of, I knew I wasn't going to get anywhere if it was a chain, but I went to places that were locally owned. And I said, I want to speak to the owner. And I talked to them and they said, yeah, we know it doesn't make any sense, but you got to do it. And it's like, no, you're selling the rope that's going to hang you. This is crazy. And it was that kind of crazy stuff. And yet, the reality is that people were going along with it, whether they believed it or not. I don't know if other people believed it or they disbelieved it, but I know that they complied with it. And, it's just, to me, that was the worst kind of insanity. Now, we haven't had any kind of review or anything. They didn't even pretend to have a review here in the United States. There has been a pretend review, a pretend inquiry in the UK, and you've got one going in New Zealand as well, right? You got a couple of them. And these are typically going to be a whitewash. Is that situation that's going on in New Zealand, I guess?
Yeah, they make it out like something's actually happening. Nothing's happening. It's just placate the masses that there was some, let's find this could have been done. Maybe we should have locked down harder earlier. Maybe that should have been what happened. And,
yeah, it's an absolute gaslight, David, and it's really disappointing to see people buying into this stuff. And obviously the government run these so-called inquiries. They appoint people they say are independent, but of course they're these people that already go along with the establishment narrative, etc. So here in New Zealand, to give you an idea of what a joke it was, the people that propagated the scam, so the big names like the Director General of Health and
Jacinda Ardern,
the Minister of Health, and the Prime Minister at that time, Ardern, all of them were excused at the last minute. They didn't have to answer any questions. And because, the public had a lot of questions for them, but suddenly at the last minute they announced, no, they don't have to say anything. That's, they were running the scam, but that's nothing to do. It was really bizarre. And then it's really sad to see, because you had these groups going to the inquiry and presenting serious information, which was quickly dismissed because the government would then just counter it with their, quote, expert, who would say, oh, no, that's not correct. I can't get into the details why that's not correct, but because I'm an expert, I just know this stuff. So, complete waste of time. But, I mean, countries like New Zealand and the UK, they love this sort of thing, their royal inquiries or their national inquiries and stuff. And
we do that occasionally. We'll have
exercise.
We'll have congressional committees that look into something like Benghazi, and they just go back and forth. Nothing ever comes of it. We had the Warren Commission when JFK was assassinated, and what we got out of that was this magic bullet theory. So maybe that's why the public is not pressing for this, or it might just be apathy, which is kind of what I'm thinking it is. I'm thinking it's not so much, we've tried this before and they never tell us the truth. It's not that kind of cynicism. I think it's really apathy from the American public. And that's the thing that really concerns me. We didn't even try to get any answers here in America.
But in some ways, I sympathize, because everyone is saturated with constant fear and drama and war and whatever. I mean, it's just... it's overwhelming. And I mean, the things I take that are really positive, like we talked about earlier, was just that many people are regretting that they ever took the vaccine.
Yes.
They're not willing to be tricked again. There's this huge distrust within the medical system. People are fearful of it and don't want to kind of be involved with it. And it's questioning all sorts of other things like virology. And I think that is the great thing about it, is we have to take the positives, and everything comes from the people. It can't come from, the government is just so, it's just so controlled.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why we really focus, David, as you know, with our publications, is to get people to the point where they can see, this contagion is not what I've been told, because look at this, influenza, the Spanish flu experiments, they didn't work. Look at the measles. They never, ever showed it was contagious despite these things. Common colds didn't work in their 40-year history of trying these experiments. So, and once you get people to see that stuff, they can't unsee it. Yeah. So they don't need to then go back through and repeat the process, because one of the worst things you'll see is people getting into arguments about face masks, for instance. And if they can see that there's no contagion in the first place, the face mask has nothing to do with that whole world.
That's
now,
right.
Face masks, they do have uses. So for people that work in industry where there's particulate matter in the factories or environment, it's really important. But face masks they should not be a discussion within.
Yeah, and that was one of the things we were talking about at the time. They're saying, okay, virus particles are this size. And if you look at the size of the filter, it's like, it's not going to work for that. They even put it on the side of the box. It's not going to protect you against any virus. And yet it was mandated for this kind of stuff. That's what I was saying about when I said, if you create a science fiction world, you got to have some consistent rules within it.
Yeah.
So don't tell me that you got this tiny particle and then tell me that it's like saying that you're going to keep mosquitoes out by using a chain link fence. It isn't going to work.
Yeah. Totally. And that's what we think is we call them distraction narratives because they're downstream from the key issues. And we always say to people, go upstream. Like, is contagion a thing? And
that's right.
It's the same with vaccination. Now, we know that there are some researchers who focus on the epidemiology of vaccines, and that's fine because they often show they can refute vaccines that way. But we also encourage people to go upstream and say the epidemiology doesn't even matter because the foundational science fails, and not just on one, but on everything, on all of virology, on all of the bacterial so-called infections. None of them show that there are microbes that cause disease. Now, you do get some microbes that increase in numbers during certain diseases like pneumonia, etc. But there's no experiment that ever showed that they cause the disease.
It may be a consequence, in other words, right? A consequence of the disease, an effect of the disease and not the cause.
Totally. And once people get this, that they can say, oh my goodness, the germ theory is wrong. It should never have been called a theory. It was a hypothesis, and the hypothesis was refuted over and over again. The experiments kept on failing, and they just had to keep making up these new narratives to keep people in this mode. And once people see it, as I say, they don't even worry about these downstream arguments, and straight away they say, well, that's fine because it doesn't bother me. And it's giving people that knowledge not to be afraid because, it's one thing for people to realize that vaccines aren't useful, but it's way more beneficial for themselves and their family to know, hey, you're not going to catch diseases. Diseases build up from within. Other people are not going to make you sick in the sense that they're going to give you some sort of infectious microbe. And once that way of thinking disappears, we find that people they're free, basically. They've left that cage.
The other thing, just touching on what you were saying before about masks and things, what really woke me up in a way in 2020 was when you see that the fraud is right in front of you. So the fraud, what I saw strongly when I really started to question things was the tests, and that the tests themselves, these are when the PCR tests were being used, would say these are not diagnostic. And I thought, how can this be? And that's before you even go upstream, like Mark says, and you go, oh my gosh, there's no such thing as SARS-CoV-2 doesn't even exist. This is when you can see it with open eyes and go, oh my gosh, it's right in my face here. On the mask packets, it says that these won't work. And yet people are walking around with them, and you think, how can this be? And that following that road will eventually lead you to freedom of going, I don't need to I don't need to partake in these rituals anymore.
It truly was a bad science fiction movie, wasn't it? And I remember there was head of state in maybe it was Africa or something where he tested some fruit and he got a positive test on it. But I had an EMS listener who has worked in the field for decades, and he was very skeptical about all this stuff. And he had somebody open up one of these packages and run it straight through without touching anything else and got a positive. So you look at all this stuff, and again, the guy who developed it said you can't use this for diagnostic purposes. Kerry Mullis said that. And so knowing all that stuff, I got to say, it was still, you just have it in the back of your mind. It's like, well, you know, you hear all this stuff. And, you know, I was absolutely convinced because of the germ games that they've been doing. The first one 2 months before 9/11, Dark Winter. I knew what that was. I'd been tipped off by somebody, said they're talking about Dark Winter 2, and you know what that was about? And it's like, yeah, I do. You know, and so be careful, watch out for this. And then it came out, and it was exactly what they had practiced, you know, for 20 years. The first one just 2 months before 9/11. And so I knew it was a hoax, but you still have in the back of your mind, you know, what if, you know, there's this little thing. But if you understand what you're telling people, then it is the final pandemic, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. The truth sets you free, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's getting people into that mindset, like Sam says, of just not participating in the rituals. You completely get out of it, and people say, well, you need to take a test. And you say, well, no, I don't. There's no need for me to do that because it's not a diagnostic test. Or people will say, well, you need to wear a mask. And you say, well, why? I'm not on a building site. I'm not breathing in dust. So that's not a thing. It's getting them well and truly out of that. And yeah, as you say, these exercises they were doing, they date right back in those decades leading up. And obviously in the 2010s, these tabletop exercises started becoming more common and, you know, right up until COVID time. And in the final pandemic, in our book, we also exposed that they were in the late 2010s, so around 2017, 2018, suddenly the whole anti-vaxxer thing becomes big in their white papers, and they start talking about this problem with anti-vaxxers and how they're going to combat it and all this kind of stuff. Because what was interesting was that these organizations who are linked up to globalist organizations, the pharmaceutical industry, the medical establishment, none of them were really talking about this until that 2 years before COVID. And clearly they had anticipated that there was going to be a rise in anti-vaccine sentiment. But one thing that was interesting was that they didn't anticipate the rise in people who could see straight through germ theory and virology. And they didn't see, it was people like Sam that they didn't see coming because, you know, she's a network TV doctor, you know, presenting generally mainstream stuff. And then suddenly...
way off script.
the COVID narrative is so preposterous that people like us said, well, hang on a minute, we need to say something here. And, of course, the whole house of cards came down with... you know, these alleged pandemics.
Well, I really do appreciate and admire your integrity. Sam, you're the only person I know that's lost 2 careers over this, not only on TV, but in terms of medicine as well, the way they've come after you and punitively come after you as well. And so I really do appreciate your integrity, sticking to the truth. It is so important what you're doing. Tell people, again, is the website the best place for people to find you? And can they get your books there at the website? Is that the best place?
Yeah, thank you, David. Yeah, please. It's because, you know, we do the censorship dance too, like you do. It's always just, especially Substack's been tricky. So no, the best place to find us is always the website, drsambailey.com, and you can, there's a tab there which has got all of our books. And you can download Mark's latest one for free or buy it if you wish to. That's all good. It's we just wish to spread that information and hopefully reduce people's fear in the process. So, yeah. And
there's a search bar on the website. So people can just, because we've covered hundreds and hundreds of topics, because people will say, hey, what about rabies, etc. So we've got a search bar there. And people can just type in these terms and hopefully we've covered it already.
Yeah.
And so a wealth of information, yes.
I'm also on YouTube, but I'm hanging on by a thread there and just just so you know. But there's Substack and also I'm on Telegram and Instagram in a little way. But so just if you...
And people can find you at Dr. Sam Bailey. That's DRSAM Bailey, BAILEY.com, right? That's the place where they can find. Go directly there. And then you don't have any people in between trying to hide you. And that's what the search engines have become. They become not a tool to find things, but a tool to hide things. especially people like Drs. Bailey. And so I really do appreciate what you're doing. I know that it's cost you a great deal. You didn't become billionaires like the people at Pfizer and Moderna. Instead, just the opposite, and you've continued to push the truth out there to help people. I really do appreciate that. Can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you for what you're doing. Appreciate it. Have a good day. Well, I want to give you a little bit of an appendix here to this interview, because after we stopped the interview, they were still on the line, and we talked a little bit about what they've been going through, and they had a fascinating story that you've got to hear. So here's what they had to say. You tried to come to the United States, and what happened when you tried to make the trip?
So in June of last year, I was trying to buy some stationery from the shop, and what happened was none of my cards would work. And I was like, this is really weird, because I just paid off my credit card. And so I went to the bank, and then the bank teller wrote on a piece of paper and said, have you recently been made bankrupt? And she slid it to me, and I was like, what? No. Like, I would know something like this, wouldn't I? And she's like, yeah, definitely. And then she went away, and she's on lots of different phone calls. And then she comes back to me and shows me this, the website, which is in New Zealand, it's the insolvency website. And my name is on there.
Wow. And
3 days earlier, a high court had declared me bankrupt because of this money from the medical council that they say I owe, the $170,000, $160,000.
Yeah, so just to be clear, it wasn't because Sam was insolvent or bankrupt. It was just because she'd never paid the medical quote authorities their COVID fines, which, were $160,000 or something.
Yeah.
And they did all this stuff in secret.
So it's like a bank robbery, except the banker is the one passing you the note saying we took all your money.
It was insane. Honestly, David, like when it happened, because it caused such a shock. And then from there, because we were supposed to be going to the States for this trip, and you're not allowed to technically travel overseas without permission, because they think you're going to abscond with money or something. And so I thought, oh no, I'm not going to be able to go to the States. And this is something I was just so looking forward to. And anyway, we fought it in the courts, went to the High Court 2 weeks before we were due to go to the States, because they hadn't done their due process. They'd never told me, they'd never served me with I had no information whatsoever that this had been going on behind the scenes.
Wow.
So the judge reserved the decision. So I didn't know whether I'd be able to travel. Mm-hmm. And anyway, I believe in God, and we flew up, and Mark and I split up our gear. So, because Mark was speaking at this conference, and so I was supposed to. Mark had the laptop, and I had the car keys and some New Zealand money in case they said no. And then we went through the smart things, gates, and then it did the green tick. And I just broke down crying, because I finally knew that I could go. And the last time we'd been to the States was in 2016. And for us, this was such a huge thing, because it was meeting all these people that we've been working with since COVID, and I've always wanted to meet. And now I knew I could give people hugs and like actually talk, and it was just such an amazing. We had such a wonderful time. So, and then when we came back, I got the news that the bankruptcy had been annulled. So it was just
that's great.
An amazing time.
Yeah, so the judge ruled that it was unlawful, the actions that they'd taken, trying to seize bank accounts, etc. They're still actively going after, saying that Sam has to pay these COVID fines. And
even though the judge has ruled it unlawful, they're still coming after you?
Well, he ruled the process that they took as unlawful, not the underlying claim that Sam needs to pay these COVID fines. But it is preposterous. And many doctors in New Zealand are starting to challenge this stuff now. They're just saying, look, this is outrageous. Why are we getting six-figure fines for questioning something? Yeah. There's no patient has ever come forward to say they were harmed. They can't find anyone in the entire nation who got harmed by anything. That Sam said, or that any of the other doctors said who were practicing at the time. But this is the world we're living in, where they are trying to scare. We think it's a good sign that this is how desperate it's become, that you have to give doctors six-figure fines if they don't agree with the narrative. Yes. And I think they're
it shows desperation, doesn't it? Shows
It
desperation.
does, yeah. And that's all they've got now is these financial penalties. They know that they can't stop people from speaking out. And so that's, I think, we have to see the positive side of things.
Yeah.
And it was quite satisfying when the judge ruled in Sam's favor and told them it was unlawful what they were doing.
And
That's
it makes
great.
you much more resilient, like you said, David. Like, I think in terms of realizing, okay, this is all they've got. Like, they tried to get me to sign a gag order way back in September 2020, and I wouldn't, and I'll never. I'm so pleased every step I've taken. It's been an empowering thing, and I feel great that this is all they've got. Like, they're still worried about me, little old me. I'm not, an aggressive person, but it's like this is the threat.
That's right. Well, one person who is determined to tell the truth, that's the key thing that they can't handle. And of course, it's not science either if you can't handle skepticism. Science only advances when somebody questions a narrative. And they should never be in fear of trying to explain themselves and what they're doing. Then it obviously isn't science. It's not based on data and the scientific method. That's what I've said all along about so many of these different frauds. We see this type of thing happening over and over again, but it really underscores, I think, the fact that you kind of see this as a ministry. You see this as a way of helping people. And that is really your heart and your motivation, and I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for doing that. Really do appreciate that. Thank you, both of you. Doctors Mark and Sam Bailey. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David.
Thank you. Well, we'll fit that in somehow. That was too important to let go. Yeah, absolutely. So, I got the same thing when they came after me. In a sense, no explanation as to what was going on. It was just PayPal. They also own Venmo, and they shut me down on both of those platforms at the same time. I spent 2 hours on the phone with the guy, and the guy kept going on. He goes, "Well, I can't see any reason given here at all. Just a message, shut this account down as right now, and no explanation given." I've never been given an explanation. I don't have the money to sue them in court and get an explanation. So I know what it is anyway. I'm not going to spend the time and the money to try to get confirmation of it. So, but you have gone through more than anybody I know. And so I really do appreciate that. Thank you so much. It's always an honor to talk to you.
Yeah, no, thank you, David. Yeah,
thank you.
And so pleased to see you doing well.
Thank you. Yeah, in spite of a lot of different things. But again, it's been prayer. Well, joining us now is Gerald Celente, and it's been a couple of weeks since we've been able to talk to Gerald. Actually, a little bit longer than that because we usually do it every other week, but it's been longer now, just before Christmas. And everybody has been dying to hear what Gerald sees coming in terms of trends for 2026. Of course, he doesn't do predictions, but he does trends, and we can infer a lot from the trends if we look at it. So we're going to talk about a lot of different things. We're going to talk about the economy, we've got so many different wars to pick from. It's like a smorgasbord in terms of commentary. It's not a good thing, but it certainly is a lot to talk about. Trump always does put a lot of stuff on our plate. So without any further ado, Gerald Celente at trendsjournal.com. And just a reminder, if you use the code NIGHT, you can save 10% on a subscription to this, and you can get the stuff right away. You don't have to wait for an interview. You can find out what Gerald thinks the trends are going to be in the next year right there. And it's a wealth of information that comes every week. And with the code, it is very, very affordable. Again, 10% off with the code NIGHT. Thank you for joining us, Gerald. And of course, you've already put out your trends journal for the trends that you see coming up in 2026, right?
Oh, yeah. And by the way, when they put your code in, it costs them the grand total of $2.50 a week.
Wow.
Pennies a day. Pennies.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And go to YouTube and, look at the comments that people have subscribed. I'm not bragging. There's no magazine like it in the world.
That's right.
High tech to AI to socioeconomic, geopolitical, on and on and on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a magazine. You read what you want. This week's magazine, by the way, 240 plus pages.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it certainly isn't certainly isn't a quiet period of time. That's one thing you can say about Trump.
But
he keeps throwing stuff at us.
Subscribe to AI you don't want to subscribe to the Trends Journal to get the top trends for 2026.
Mm-hmm.
What you want to do is you want to go to Google and Google the top trends for 2026. And when the magazine came out, this is what AI came up with. You ready?
Yeah. Let's say this.
AI top trends for 2026 point towards a shift from 2025's quiet luxury to quote loud luxury. You ready? Featuring bold colors, exaggerated embellishments, tassels, and bows. Go AI, go AI, get stupid like the rest of everybody. No. Hey, Salenti, I'm going to go to the Wall Street Journal. No, I'm going to go to the New York Times. Not a word about the top trends of 2026.
Wow.
Barely a peep. This is what happened in 2025.
This is like going, you might as well go back and watch Paleface with a Bob Hope and say that the trends are going to be buttons and bows this year. That's what we're going to have this year, right?
You got it. The reason they don't do it is simple. They don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Trends 2000, international best-selling book.
That's right.
Trend tracking, far better than Megatrends, Time Magazine. Publishing the Trends Journal since 1999. They don't teach trend forecasting at Harvard. They don't teach it at Yale. They don't teach it at Princeton. They don't teach it at Oxford, at Cambridge. They don't know how to do it.
And they don't teach it at OpenAI either. They don't know how to do it. The AI is basically going to plagiarize what other people put out there. They're not thinking, they're just collecting what other people put out. And if the New York Times and other people like that aren't paying attention to it either, you're certainly not going to get it from AI either. And
it's not the New York Times, it's the New York Slimes.
Yeah, that's right.
Get it straight, all right?
That's right. Well, let's talk about the trends coming up. Now, we've had an amazing year for gold and silver, and it kicked off again at the beginning of this year. Already the predictions that we saw from a lot of the different banking institutions and their analysts, that's already back in the rearview mirror. We've already sailed past a lot of those that have been put out there. What do you think is going to happen with gold and silver? And this is the key thing, because instead of predicting a price, I'm looking at gold and silver. I'm not looking at it like some kind of a commodity that's going to be going up and down, up and down. I see this as part of a reset of the financial system. I imagine you do too. How do you see it?
All right. Again, I mentioned the book, Trend Tracking, 1989. I began buying gold in 1978 when the Iranian conflict broke out. And they taught us to hate Iran without anybody knowing how the CIA and the MI6 back in 1953, the Mossadegh government, because he said the oil belongs to the Iranian people, not BP or Standard Oil. Back then it was Exxon Standard Oil and Anglo-Iranian oil. He said it belongs to the Iranian people.
Same mistake as Chavez, right? In Venezuela.
Yeah, same thing. So what happened, I started buying gold back then. What's going on now has nothing to do back then. Back then, the United States was number one. China's gross domestic product back in 1978, under $150 billion. And this is a billion people, under 150 billion. Today, when you put the real numbers in, it's way above 20 trillion.
Wow. The
United States ruled the world back then. Now we have the death of the dollar coming. Trump wants to lower interest rates. The lower interest rates go, the deeper the dollar falls. The deeper the dollar falls, the higher gold prices go up. Gold, again, Trends Journal subscribers know it as well you do. What was our top trend for 2024?
Gold.
Golden year for gold.
Yeah. Right.
Go to your Trends Journal. All year long, we've been saying going up, and go back to October 16th. On my podcast, I said there's going to be a correction in gold. It's going to go down at least $500. It did about a week later. It's going to be a correction. Nothing goes straight up or straight down. But gold is the future because of the geopolitical and socioeconomic uncertainties that have never existed in your lifetime or mine.
Yeah, I agree.
These are the most dangerous times of our lives. And that's why the precious metals are skyrocketing. On the silver end, and by the way, as we're going on the air today, what is gold selling for? About 4,600 and $25 an ounce.
Yeah. And let me say this, just to let the audience know, we're recording this on Wednesday afternoon. And so, the way things are moving very quickly, it looks like we're probably, by the time this airs, we may be at war with Iran. That is what the Jerusalem Post is quoting an Israeli official. And of course, whatever the Israeli officials want, Trump's going to give it to them. So it'll be interesting to see what happens to the price of gold when that kicks in, Gerald.
Well, yeah, this is the headline from Haaretz. Report, Trump administration warns Saudis, Gulf countries to prepare U.S. strike on Iran.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, now, when did he strike them the last time? What day? Do you remember? It was a Saturday.
Yeah.
When did he kidnap Maduro? Saturday. He does it when the markets are closed.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. That's a good prediction. So maybe it won't have happened by the time we air this on Friday. So
he does it when the markets are closed.
Yeah.
Because if this happens when the markets are open, whew.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Yeah. So
anyway, we're very bullish on this. And silver now, again, going back, you make connections between different fields. Silver, by the way, is being used very heavily in high tech.
Oh, yeah.
And like, let's say you got a gold ring and you need the dough, you melt down the gold and you go sell the gold ring. Silver, your cell phone breaks, your computer breaks, you throw it away. There's no stockpiles. And with the AI, more and more silver is being used in these chips and everything else. And there are no stockpiles of this stuff.
Yeah.
That's why you're seeing, I mean, what did silver price look like? 100?
Yeah. Oh, wow. It was well over 100% this last year. Yeah. But, we're also seeing, we're seeing industrial use is so high that we've had a deficit for 6 years now of silver production versus silver use. And as you point out, people are not recycling it. There's also something on the headline that a lot of people have been pointing to, and that is Samsung has a solid state battery that is superior in every way to the lithium batteries. It charges faster, twice as long life, and it has a much longer range, and it doesn't have the fire issues, all these things, except it's more pricey because it's got a lot of silver in it. And if that catches on, I mean, I could almost see the U.S. government mandating it because of the fire hazards with the lithium stuff. But if that catches on, that's going to be a huge sink for silver, isn't it?
Yes. And again, think about it. Where's Samsung? What country are they from?
Yeah, that's right. South Korea, right?
Yeah. Asian. The Asian country is going to take over AI. Yeah. China's going to lead the world in it. And there's going to be a dot-com bust. They overinvested in these companies. That's one of our top trends for 2026. Trends are born, they grow, they mature, reach old age. You don't invest in the companies that are infants that were just born in 2022. Let's go back a year ago, a year ago in a week. There was a bust called when NVIDIA stock lost $600 billion in one day when a company called DeepSeek came out from China.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Right. About that. Yeah. Again, you don't invest all your dough in the companies that are just born. China's going to lead the world in AI. I've said we've done it before. I mentioned to you before Slick Willie Clinton brought them into the World Trade Organization 25 years ago, 10% of Chinese 18-year-olds went to college. Today, nearly 70%. And they're AI high-tech addicted. And China's dumping hundreds of billions of dollars into AI. Again, it's the future. Love it, hate it, want it, don't want it. It's it. And you're going to see a dot-com bust if or when the United States and Israel attack Iran. You're going to see Brent crude go over $100 a barrel. That's going to sink the global economy, the equity markets, and get ready for the greatest depression. Don't worry. When all else fails, they take you to war. I'm a Yankee Doodle dandy. Well,
while we're on the economy and gold, as you've always said, that Trump is very good for gold, and now it looks like he wants to be a one-man Federal Reserve. Instead of ending the Federal Reserve, instead of auditing the Federal Reserve, he wants to get rid of Jerome Powell, so he's going to audit the Federal Reserve building. They're not going to audit the gold that's in Fort Knox, but he's going to take it over. He's got some ideas of what he's going to do to manipulate interest rates and his own version of quantitative easing. That's going to also stoke gold, isn't it?
Yep. And by the way, I think Trump is going to be golden for gold.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, let's go back. Let's go back to February of last year. Hey. Me, we're going to go to Fort Knox, all right? All right. All right. Hey, Gatson, how come you didn't go there?
Mm-hmm.
They go there. They know what's in there.
Mm-hmm.
They know what's in there. They're going to come out with this story. By the way, according to the data, the United States has more gold than anybody else in the world.
Mm. Well, there's a lot of people that believe that China has hidden a lot of their stuff. What do you think?
They'll say, make up a number.
Mm-hmm.
And we're raising the price of gold.
Mm-hmm.
We're the ones that set the price, and we're changing it.
Mm-hmm.
And now gold is going to be worth $10,000 an ounce. And we just wiped out our $38 trillion budget deficit. So who days to hear? They'll make up some crap, I'm telling you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gold is it, man. Gold, again, there's going to be a correction. Nothing goes straight up or straight down.
Sure.
Again, you go October 16th, trends. I did a podcast. I said there'd be a correction in gold. It could go down $500 an ounce. 5 days later, it went down $500 an ounce.
Yeah.
So nothing goes straight up or straight down, but this gold and silver, it's the commodity.
It is the trend. Yeah, it is the trend, isn't it? Well, let's talk a little bit about Iran. And of course, things could change very, very quickly in the next 24, 36 hours. But you believe that it's really going to send a shockwave through the oil industry, create a depression, right?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If the prices go up above 100, as we're talking now, Brent crude is about $65 and change a barrel. Mm-hmm. Last year, this time, it was about $80 a barrel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right?
Yeah.
It goes over $100 a barrel. You're going to see inflation go way up.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, there's more supply than demand. That's why the prices are so low.
Mm-hmm.
And more supply than demand means the whole economy is on slowdown.
Mm-hmm.
Should spike above $100 a barrel, you're going to see an equity market crash.
Mm. Yeah. Well, again, when we look at this, with all the oil that is in Venezuela, Trump had a meeting last week, and he had these different oil company executives in, and the Exxon CEO said he thought that Venezuela was uninvestable. And right after that, Trump says, well, he's out. He's not going to get it. So it is actually uninvestable for his company, I guess. But when you look at it, not factoring in what the shock to the oil system that an Iran war is going to do, but when you look at where we are right now, without that being there, what incentive would the oil companies have to go in there and put a glut of oil on the market? They don't want to see the price go down. This might be more of an incentive for them to get invested in Venezuela, but it's still a long time to get this infrastructure to where it's productive again, right? What do you think about that in terms of the oil aspect?
But again, times change. I think economies go up and down.
Mm-hmm.
And what you said about Trump throwing a guy from Exxon out.
Mm-hmm.
This is Trump last week in the New York Times. They asked him if there were any limits on his global powers.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Trump said, quote, yeah. Yeah. There is one thing, my own morality, my own mind. It's the only thing that could stop me. I don't need international law. All right, let's stop.
Yeah.
My own mind? How about what somebody else is thinking? What the hell are you talking about what someone else is thinking? Only my mind counts.
Yeah, that's right.
I know everything.
Yeah.
As you know, I taught close combat for many years.
Mm-hmm.
And you come by the guy who used to write for the magazine, may rest in peace, Bradley Steiner. Top close combat guy in America, who taught my teacher, John Perkins. The first thing, number one, that we learned in close combat, the only time you use your ego is when your life is on the line. Think about it. That's my ego. Don't mess with me, man. Trump is pure ego when he says that only his mind counts. What other people, facts, data show, that doesn't count at all. It's only my mind. It's pure ego.
Yeah.
Ego.
Yeah, the ego has landed. That's basically
perfectly said.
It's amazing. And what is amazing to me is so many people that can't or won't see that, and just how dangerous that is. Yeah, it truly is amazing. Well, when we look at this, there's another aspect of the Iranian thing, which you've talked about in the past as well. Gen Z revolt. And so there's been a massive revolt that's there. And I looked at this and I thought, why in the world would anybody in their right mind, assuming that they had a mind, why would you interfere with that, right? If he interferes with this, of course, that's going to only help the Ayatollah because, as you pointed out over and over again, when people have, and we've seen this throughout history, many times in our lives, we've seen that, governments will take people to war because things are difficult domestically, and they get people's minds off it. We saw it with Israel and Netanyahu, right? Take them to war because he's struggling politically in his own country. And so if somebody is struggling politically in their own country, they want to have a war. Why would Trump give that to them if he had any inkling of a strategy?
Why would you ask that question?
It's a rhetorical question, isn't it?
Why?
Yeah.
Why is it the same person insane? I mean, let's go back to Gen Z revolution. First of all, you mentioned about Netanyahu. Everybody forgets there were 39 weeks of protests going on in Israel before the Hamas attack.
Yeah.
Because of Trump, Netanyahu, Greenberg, iceberg, what's the difference? Anyway, Netanyahu wanted to do away with the court system and say the government was in control. There were 39 weeks of protest because of his Judicial Reform Act. Not my language, the language from Isaac Herzog, president of Israel. There's a civil war going on. There was a civil war going on. Hamas attacks, everybody forgot. Again, going back, Haaretz, Israel, again, we only write the facts. Everybody forgot this. 3 days after the attack, it was reported that the United States and Egypt had warned Israel the attack was coming. And Haaretz and other newspapers have since reported they all knew it was coming. They let it happen. Got the people's mind off it.
That's right.
So again, when all else fails, they take you to war. And the global economies are failing. The United States economy, again, AI is responsible for 50% of last year's gross domestic product.
Wow. That's amazing.
10% of Americans are responsible for 50% of the spending last year. Top 10% of Americans own 93% of the stock market. The rest of the 90% own 7%. 7%.
Wow.
That's it. The rich own everything. Last year, the top 10 billionaires in America, they only got $700 billion richer. The job reports, look at the jobs that are created. Look at the numbers. Health services, paying nothing. Because, again, I'm the baby boom generation. I'm the same age as Trump. So if I fall asleep, I'm the same age. I mentioned that little clown boy, Jake Crapper, on CNN. You know what he said?
What did he say?
I get his exact quote here. If I can't find it, I'll tell you what it was. Here it is. Ready? Look, he's 79 years old. I mean, that's not abnormal for a 79-year-old to be sleepy. Hey, scumbag! F you! Don't you talk to me like that! I don't eat shit! All right? I'm in good I'm 79. Well, we had an interview with Salenti, but it's not abnormal for a 79-year-old. All right, that's the crap. So don't subscribe to the Trends Journal. Go to the Cartoon News Network and swallow crap. From Jake Crapper. A little piece of crap to put that kind of shit out there. Disgusting.
Yeah.
How dare you say that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, getting back to the Gen Z stuff.
By the way, people don't like my language. Hey, what did Trump do to that guy the other day?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Guy that called him about he wouldn't put out the Epstein files?
Pedophile protector.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what did Trump say?
Yeah. He nailed it too. That's exactly the truth hurt, didn't it? Well, yeah, Trump said F you, yeah. And he shoots him a bird, right? Yeah.
And then gave him the finger, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Salenti, now you can't do that. He's the president. He can do anything he wants. And I'm a gutless little clown, and I suck up to him like I suck up to. Oh, we go suck up. Hey, remember Genocide Joe? I forgot about him. You talked about Iran before, and I forgot this. After the Iranian Revolution, the Iranian economy was growing nicely. They were doing great. And then all of a sudden, the Nobel Peace of Crap Prize winner, Barack Obama, put sanctions on them. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, the Nobel Peace of Crap Prize winner quoted in the book Double Down, I'm really good at killing people. You're really good at killing people, you little skinny prick. I don't want to use the right word. I don't want to be censored. You couldn't fight your way out of a paper bag. What do you mean? Killing people.
Yeah.
Killed over 20,000 people with drones. Yeah. Right? He put sanctions on Iran. Then he made a deal with them when they signed that agreement not to build the nuclear things, right? Then Trump gets into office, and he puts more sanctions on them. And more sanctions and more sanctions and more sanctions and more sanctions. That's why because he's a puppet of Israel.
Yeah.
Is Obama. Obama's the guy that gave the deal that steals about $3.6 billion of our money each year to give to Israel. They call it taxes. It ain't taxes, it's thievery. Anyway, going back, so then Trump put more and more sanctions on them, so the country's going bust. That's why a Gen Z revolution, one of our top trends. It broke. Again, we talked about this. That little boy of nobody ever heard of. Again, not what you like, what you want, what you wish for. This little nothing of a kid, Mandani, in New York City. Biggest city in New York. And I'm a Bronx guy, no New York. Beep, 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 bop. I got a little nobody here that nobody ever heard of. How come? Gen Z. Yeah. 14 to 29-year-olds. But the 18 to 29-year-olds were the biggest turnout in the primaries that beat little Andy Cuomo, another arrogant piece of scum. What was the biggest turnout in the election? Millennials and Gen Z. They got no jobs. Oh, a couple of weeks ago, hey, they overthrew a government in a place called Bulgaria. Who did it? Gen Z. What happened in Nepal? Gen Z. Hey, how about Tanzania? Gen Z. Oh, Kenya? Gen Z. Indonesia. France? Gen Z. Morocco. Madagascar, Gen Z, Gen Z, Gen Z, taking the streets. They're broke, they're busted because the billionaires own everything.
Yeah, that's right. As you said many times, when they lose it, they lose it. They lose everything, they lose it. And that's what we're saying all around the world.
They have nothing left to lose, they lose it. And they're losing it. They got no future.
The other thing that really struck me this week when I saw the picture of what's going on in Iran, of course, there's been a lot of violence there. And I'm just going to pull this up here, and you can get us back there, Lance, when we do this. But this is a picture. Yeah, I know you can't see it, Gerald, but this is a picture of the Iranian police, riot police. They look exactly like ICE. They got full militarized helmets and all the rest of the stuff. Of course, their faces are masked as well, all black uniforms. That's what we see over and over again. And yeah.
Look what they're doing to these people in Minnesota.
Yeah, that's right.
Look what they did to that woman, blowing her brains out. Look what they did to, you see the other one that came out pulling that woman out of the car like that?
Yeah.
Men don't do that. Real men don't act like that against the woman.
I agree. And don't you believe that this is...
Real men don't do that.
Yeah, I agree. Don't you believe that this is deliberate provocation? They want a civil war. Don't you think that's my take on it?
No,
you don't think so?
crazy people.
Yeah. I just think that when I look at this, it is so over the top. And of course, we've gotten to the point where, and you look at the aftermath of that shooting with Renee Good, and of course, Trump and like I said, they didn't even try to think of, well, let's think of some way that we can spin this. They just made stuff up. Like Christine Ohm said, yeah, they were stuck in the snow. And as they're trying to get out, she attacks them with her car. They didn't bother to look at it. You know, when Trump was shown the video from by some New York Times reporters in the Oval Office, he was speechless, and he changed the topic. They don't even care whether or not you know that they're lying anymore. They just lie to your face. That's why I believe that it's a deliberate provocation. They would love to have a war between these two tribes. And if you look at social media, I mean, the hatred that I see that has been engendered by this is just unbelievable. If you gave both these sides a lot of guns and go after them, they would gleefully kill each other right now. They don't need any more provocation.
Yep.
It's amazing.
You're 100% right. You know, I'm looking for something here you said about Trump lying. I'm trying to find. How dare you call him a liar? My his resolution: peace on earth. I'm the most anti-war president in history. How dare you call him a liar? September 25th, when he's running for office, 2024. We want to have peace on earth all over. How dare you call him a liar? I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars. October 20th, 2024. Wow. All right? All right? Lying in front of your face. Lying in front of your face.
Yeah. Yeah, as a matter of fact, you know, when you look at this, where do you think things go from Venezuela? I mean, we've had a moment now where everybody is celebrating him and, oh, what a genius move this is. It seems to me very much like George W. Bush getting on the aircraft carrier and saying, this is it, this is taking his victory lap. I think there's a long way to go before he can claim any kind of a victory. What do you think in Venezuela? How do you see this moving forward?
It's a wild card.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody knows.
Yeah. It is kind of interesting that he's, the line that they're taking, because they don't want to say that they arrested a head of state somewhere and kidnapped him. So what they're saying is he didn't win the election legitimately. And it's like, okay, so who did you say won the election legitimately? The Machado woman or the Gonzalez guy? They kept her off the ballot. She looked like she was going to win, but they kept her off the ballot. And so the Western Observer said, we think Gonzalez won and Maduro stole it. So why don't you put those people in? If you think Gonzalez won it, why don't you make him the president? Why don't you make Machado the president? Of course, that is also a rhetorical question, isn't it?
You use the word kidnap. Not again, this is why people subscribe to the Trends Journal. You're not allowed to use that word. All the Western media, they never use the word kidnap. You ready? BBC has again come under scrutiny. This is from The Guardian. After it released that staff were instructed to avoid using the word kidnapped when reporting on the U.S. forcibly seizing Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro. The BBC instructions were disclosed by The Guardian, and BBC journalists have been banned from describing the kidnapped Venezuelan leader as having been kidnapped. A screenshot of what the BBC told reporters, quote, to ensure clarity and consistency in our reporting, please follow these guidelines when describing the recent events in Venezuela. Under guidance, captured is to be attributed to the U.S. description of the operation, as in, quote, the U.S. said Maduro was captured during the operation. The word seized is described as acceptable for use in our reporting when appropriate, while journalists must avoid using the term, quote, kidnap.
I didn't get that memo. I'm still waiting for them to CC me on that, I guess. So I've been calling it kidnapping the entire time.
I'm saying, when I say to you that there's no magazine like what we're doing, we don't. Nobody tells us what to do. We have no advertisers.
Yeah.
Nobody tells us what to do. Media's gone. It's dead.
And that's really surprising, too, because, the BBC, the fact that they would grovel before the U.S. government like that, even as Trump is suing them for what, $10 billion? Is that what the ridiculous
That's
amount
why
is?
they're doing it.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
BBC, yeah.
Yeah.
BS crap.
So what do you think is going to happen? He's also made some noise about Colombia and Cuba, even though he said Cuba was not going to, they were going to bring them to their knees by making sure they didn't get any oil from Venezuela. Then they went in and said, okay, well, Mexico can sell them oil. I mean, there's such confusion. It's almost, they don't know what they're doing, do they? From one day, it's almost like the tariffs. How do you read that?
You just said it's like the tariffs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Every day he changes his mind.
Yeah.
He's out of his mind. What mind? Oh, my mind is the only mind that counts. What's wrong with you? I just said it over here, right? My mind.
Yeah, his mind and his morality is what Jon Stewart said. So, in other words, nothing. We don't have any morality. We don't have any mind.
Yeah, how about mind your own business?
Yeah, that's the mind, right? Let's talk a little bit about Greenland, of all things. What is going on with Greenland? Why do you think they're so desperate? I mean,
it's nuts.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the only thing I can see with it, certainly, they got resources, but how do you get to them? Defense, I mean, he's got a treaty and they've had military bases there. And in the past, they've had up to 10,000 troops right after World War II. They've only got a couple of hundred now, but they still have that treaty. What do you think is going to happen with this stuff? What do you think it's going to do with NATO and that type of thing? I look at it, my guess is, Gerald, I think they're just going to move a massive number of troops there and say, hey, we got a right to do this based on the treaty. I could see them just occupying Greenland. What do you think?
I don't know what a crazy person is going to do.
Do you think he's going to put on a uniform and start prancing around like Napoleon or something? Or what is that one? Is that in the cards for 2026?
Big enough.
That's right. Well, yeah, they would, little general in a different way, right? Ukraine. What do you think is going to happen with Ukraine?
Again, we said it on and over and over. We said that, remember all the crap, again, from the mainstream media? Mm-hmm. Out the BS from the Trump administration, that was a peace deal was right at hand. Mm-hmm. How many times do we hear that?
Yeah.
It's very simple. We said it from the beginning. First, we said that, go back to your Trends Journal, back in February of 2022, when the war began. Mm-hmm. There's no way that Ukraine could defeat Russia.
That's right.
Napoleon, you mentioned Napoleon. What he left Poland with 410,000 troops to attack Moscow, came back with 10,000. Yeah. Operation Barbarossa, Germany, they killed 27 million Russians. Who were the first ones to beat the Germans?
Yeah.
Russians.
That's right.
So there's no way they're going to beat them. So then when Russia started launching the attack, even back in the early days, they got like 20% of the land. We said, they're not going to give this back. Mm-hmm. And then what happened? Oh, remember that other clown, that other arrogant fat boy, Lloyd Austin? Mm-hmm. Remember?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The head of the Defense Department, now it's the Department of War. I forgot. Remember they're going to have that, what would they call that thing? The counteroffensive.
Yeah.
Everybody forgot about the counteroffensive. The crap that they were selling. There's going to be a huge counteroffensive as slimeball Joe Biden and Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State. I went to Dalton. I went to Harvard. My daddy was the ambassador of Hungary. My uncle was the ambassador of Belgium. I'm just an arrogant piece of scum. Yeah, that guy stole what, about $300 billion of our money? Mm-hmm. And what happened? Counteroffensive? Mm-hmm. Totally lost, totally forgotten. And what happened with it? Russia took more land. They're not going to give back what they got. Mm-hmm. End of story. People don't know, but of course, and we've done this 1,000 times with you in our Trends Journal back in 2014, how happy that guy is, the United States overthrow of the democratically elected government of Viktor Yanukovych in Ukraine back then. But anyway, so now here's the deal. Why did they attack? Oh, the Azovs, the Nazi Ukrainian government. How many Russian people they killed in the Donbass region? Over 15,000.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Again, Ukraine was part of Russia until Khrushchev, who's Ukrainian, said it's a separate entity, but it's still within the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And again, the Eastern Europe part of Ukraine is Russian. And it was slaughtering the Russian people. So here's the deal. There ain't going to be no deal.
Mm-hmm.
Russia is not going to give up what it has. So there's going to be a false flag event that's going to unify Europe to try to attack Russia. They've done it before. They'll do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Only the facts. Another piece of scum crap over there, your chancellor over there in Germany, Moitz. Oh, the BlackRock guy. Yeah, that clown. Borrowing the Gulf, Germany, third largest economy in the world, in a recession for 2 years. Numbers haven't come out yet for 2025, but the estimate is it'll grow by 0.2%. 3 years of recession. They're borrowing $1 trillion to build up their defense and our infrastructure so they can hold the tanks.
Mm-hmm.
Germany, France, UK, one country after another in Europe building up their militaries.
Yeah.
One after another.
And giving warnings about how you got to get the hospital set up so you can take in a lot of casualties. And of course, they have been at war with their own people over the green agenda. They have destroyed the industrialized base. So now let's repurpose it to making military equipment, and let's get the people fighting a different enemy than us. And so I agree with you. I think it's going to be, it was NATO that pushed this thing from the very beginning and pushed into there, did the coup and all the rest of the stuff. I remember when the UK defense minister said at the beginning of this stuff, he said, "We beat the Russians once in Crimea, we'll beat them again." I said at the time, so why were the Russians in Crimea a couple of hundred years ago, right, during the Crimean War in the late 1800s? So, why 150 years ago, I guess, why were the Russians in Crimea 150 years ago? Because the Russians were in Crimea for 400 years.
Yeah, and what the hell are the British doing over there?
Exactly.
Exactly. I forgot. The sun never sets on the British Empire.
Yeah, that's right.
And again, shove that word king up your you know what.
Yeah.
You're an Italian. If they were Italian, you'd call them a mafia. Murderous, murderous, murderous scum.
Yep. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think there'll be a false flag or something that's going to be driven by the European side. And, of course, they're very eager to put boots on the ground. Already the UK Prime Minister said we're going to get boots on the ground. They're trying to drag us into it with a security guarantee. What do you think about that? Do you think that the U.S. will do that? I mean, there'll be a political cost for Trump to do that.
Yeah, I think the United States will join it.
Yeah.
Again, NATO, the deal made between Gorbachev and Bush Sr., James Baker at the time, quote, NATO will not move 1 inch further.
Mm-hmm.
16 NATO countries then, now there are 32.
Yeah.
So if we had the Russians up here in Canada, 4.5 hours from me, and the Chinese down in Mexico, America would be fine with that, wouldn't they?
That's one of the interesting things I think about Greenland is this, Trump is really getting Denmark and a lot of other countries upset about this. That's about the only silver lining I see in this is that it's a chaos and division within NATO over this Greenland thing.
What the hell is Denmark doing in Greenland?
Yeah, I think some of the Greenland people have said that as well.
How about Greenland just being Greenland and get the hell out of it?
That's right. Yeah, well, they have said that over and over again. They've said that they don't want to be under the U.S. or under Denmark, but even more so not under the U.S. and, the bribes that they're offering them and all the rest of this stuff. So let's take a look at the domestic stuff because, again, it's probably not going to be too much longer before we get the Supreme Court decision that's going to say whether or not Trump has to give back the tariffs that he put in arbitrarily on everybody. And he's talking about how that's going to be a real mess, and so he can't really undo what he just arbitrarily did. What do you think the economic consequences are going to be if that happens? Because it does lean towards that.
Not a lot.
Yeah.
Not a lot. I don't think it'll make much of a difference on that.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the tariffs haven't caused the inflation, according to the data that they anticipated it would be. And again, it's by the way, you mentioned something before. I want to go back to it. You mentioned about I forgot the exact phrase that you used about Europe's deindustrialization or something. How did you say it?
Yeah, they've gone to war with their own people and deindustrialized it.
Yeah,
the base.
Yeah. Who deindustrialized it? This is the guy. Not them.
Slick Willie, huh?
Brought China into the World Trade Organization.
Yeah.
25 years ago. What happened? All these Western companies that went over there to get cheap labor gave China all the high tech and heavy industry capabilities they never had.
Mm-hmm.
And now, these are the Chinese. They're not stupid people. Now, who's the leader in EVs? BYD.
Yeah.
As I said, who's going to lead the world in AI? China. They did it for that. So here, go back. Again, only by the facts. You go back to 2001 to like 2018, 2019.
Mm-hmm.
There's Volkswagen, BMW, Mercedes, Ford, GM.
Mm-hmm.
They're selling cars like crazy. Their profits are skyrocketing. And then what happened? We don't need you anymore.
Yeah,
that's right. Everything we ever had. And now we got more than you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's what happened.
And then when you look at the Paris Climate Accord, they didn't just give them the heavy industry. They also gave them the energy monopoly. I mean, they have access to cheap, affordable energy that nobody in Western Europe has. The UK, when I say they're deindustrializing them, I mean, they're really just going through and ripping everything out, shutting down all their coal plants, even shutting down the plants that can make steel. Because, hey, it's going to destroy the world, we have CO2 and that type of thing. And yet, nobody cares if it's done in China or if it's done in India. They only care about the CO2 if it's coming out of the US or the EU.
China is doing all they can right now to make it cleaner,
mm-hmm.
particularly with these EVs. And that is out there, what they're doing in so many different ways. I mean, they're the solar capital of the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so they're trying to get off this. And by the way, again,
well, they're making the solar panels by burning coal from North Korea.
What I'm saying, they're coming up with new technologies that they're investing in.
Yeah, that's right.
Trying to do it. They're doing
and going to an EV, that was something that right away, we had such a lead on them. All the industrialized countries of the West had such a lead on them in terms of internal combustion engines, and then that was just thrown out the window. Okay, now everybody's going to have batteries and motors, and so it's very easy to catch up on that type of thing, isn't it?
And I'm telling you, I read this stuff, man. They're investing very heavily in alternative energies and mm-hmm. again, by the facts, they're EV crazy.
Yeah.
They're doing away with combustion engines.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm 4.5 hours if I drive to Montreal from here. Take Amtrak. You know how long it takes? Right across the river, Rhinecliff.
Mm-hmm. From
Rhinecliff to Montreal by train, 10 hours. Oh, no, my friend just went there.
Yeah.
Back and forth, 10 hours each way.
Yeah.
Take the subway in New York. How about a night in Calcutta? Filthy, dirty, ancient crap.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Go to China. How about the high-speed rail? Like about 250 miles an hour? Yeah. They're going clean as they could. They're trying. We're not doing anything. We're going back.
That's right.
We're going backwards. Again, the 20th century, I say, was the American century, but unfortunately, the 21st century is going to be the Chinese century.
Yeah.
Because the business of America is war.
That's right.
And China's business.
That's right.
Yeah. Hey, go back to Go back to February last year, right? All right. I'm on CNBC says, yeah, the defense sector market went way down because President Trump said he was going to cut the military budget by $50 billion, $500 billion. That was last February. Oh, what did he say last week?
Yeah.
Put another 500 billion into it.
Yeah. Yeah. Just had a record all-time high of $1 trillion. Hit that for the first time. Then right away turns around. Let's make it $1.5 trillion.
Yeah.
Let's increase it by 50%. Yeah.
What did he say last February?
Yeah. Right.
Again, how can he lies in front of your eyes, and they hate me for calling him out as lies. I'm scared. I got to tell you. Will ICE come in here and kill me, or have somebody there kill me?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. ICE has become I think they're gearing it up for a secret police surveillance state, because you look at their budget and, $28.5 billion, and it would be the 14th largest military in the world if it was a separate country. Their military is between Ukraine and Israel in terms of the amount of money that they have. And what are they doing with the money? Not just hiring, they're getting a lot of surveillance technology to surveil everybody everywhere. And yet they don't want you to see their face. Boy, if you take a cell phone video of them, they want to beat you and kill you.
Oh, you see the pictures of what they're doing to people.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
just saw where they punched this kid, throw him out into the street. He didn't do anything. He's taking a picture.
Yeah, yeah.
Again, it's terrible what's going on, and there's going to be, it's only going to get worse. Again, it's going to be the total surveillance state.
Mm-hmm.
You'll know what you did, where you did, what you did. It's going to be. I want to move on to something else, by the way.
Sure, yeah.
The bank stocks are going down as we're talking. You know that I've called an office building bust.
Mm-hmm.
When they locked down COVID, everything changed. Everything changed. Here, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
This is my data. This is WDRB. They say that Central Business District in Louisville, vacancy rate, 40%.
Wow.
Louisville.
Wow.
How about Chicago? 28%. 27 and change. Denver. Portland, Oregon. Seattle, Washington. All in the high 20%, 30% range. Vacant.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's say my firm owns the building and leases. Remember, the COVID war happened in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Leases are 5 and 10 year leases. Now, this is 6 years later. Leases have been up. Ain't renewing, man. Don't need all this space.
Mm-hmm.
My work at home 3 days a week. I had them in little cubicles, never saw them anyway. You don't need them here. Come in a couple of days a week. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
How are they going to pay their mortgages, their loans? They're not.
Mm-hmm.
That's why this repo is going on. They're dumping hundreds of billions of dollars so the banksters could borrow money for free because they ain't got the dough. There's going to be failures. The banks are not going to be able to cover these losses. In ancient history, 3 years ago, Conman Valley Bank, First Republic, and what was the other one? First Republic, and it was another one that went bust.
I think the third one, they were still solvent, but they kind of forced them out because they didn't like the crypto stuff that was there, right?
Anyway,
I'm trying to remember, yeah.
3 banks, boom, down went the equity and up went gold prices.
Mm-hmm.
First Republic, that was it. First Republic, Signature, and Silicon.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
3 banks, boom. Markets are crashing. Gold prices are spiking. That was 3 banks. It's going to be 30 banks.
Yeah.
We're going to see failures. Again, the data is all there. Yep. U.S. cities where central business districts office vacancies rates are low. They got it right here. And it's one after another. The average is over 20%.
And, you talk about that 3 banks going down and how it spooked the markets and everything. And I'm looking at this this back and forth with Trump, and everybody said, "Oh, we want Fed independence," and all this. It's like, yeah, I want it too. I want to be independent of them, but that's not in the cards. But nevertheless, once Trump starts to make his moves, and of course he's doing some of his own quantitative easing, he wants to manipulate interest rates and all the rest of the stuff. It's going to spook the marketplace, I think, and I think it'll happen very quickly, the reactions to it, because people are going to calculate that. They're not going to wait for it to trickle through. It's going to be right away. People are going to react to that. And of course, that's going to impact gold, right?
Oh, yeah. You ready? This is according to Moody's. Dayton, Ohio, vacancy rate, 37.5%. Their number in Dallas, Texas, 34.4%. St. Louis, 33%. San Antonio, 31.4%. Las Vegas, 30.7%.
Wow.
Again, homeless everywhere. Crime, it's the way of the world. And it's only going to get worse if we don't have peace on earth. And again, my money where my mouth is. I launched Occupy Peace. You were kind enough to come up here, your wife and son, and speaking here. If we don't unite, and these billionaires, if they gave us $1 billion of peace, we'd have it tomorrow. You can't do it without the dough. And if we don't have peace on earth, it's going to be hell on earth.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you've been saying for a while that this is going to be leading to, what was dialed in with the fake pandemic was a Greater Depression, as well as dragflation that even anticipated that, prior to that, because of all the phony manipulations by the Federal Reserve on quantitative easing and everything. They had dialed in stagflation, but you called it dragflation because it wasn't just going to go stagnant. It was going to go down quite a bit. But then with all the commercial real estate issues because of lockdown and how things changed along with that, a Greater Depression that is in the works here. And so is there any good news that you see?
No, I don't see any good news at all.
Yeah.
None. The only thing to me, by the way, that'll change is a renaissance. We have to bring back the spirit of what this country used to be. When the Black Plague happened and some 60% of Europe was wiped out because of the filthy sanitation, and the Renaissance began in the late 1300s, they used to say alla Romana et all'antica, in the manner of the Romans and the ancients, to describe the quality of their work. But it without the Medicis, the banksters of the day that made it happen. Facts don't mean anything to people. We have to bring up the spirit of what this country was and why people all over the world wanted to come here at one time. It was the land of opportunity. And now the bigs own everything.
That's right. That's right.
Again, when you and I were young guys, I've said this 1,000 times, there were hardware stores, stationery stores, drug stores, shoe stores, clothing stores, fish stores. Everything now is a chain.
Yeah.
Goes back to Gen Z revolution. What future there?
Yeah.
What future there?
That's right. That's
So
right.
Renaissance, to me, is the only way it'll change. Facts don't mean anything to people. We bring back the music style and spirit of this country. Again, one of my books, and you could get this on going to Trends Journal, my favorite book, what Zitzi gave Honey Boy. And Zitzi's the Neapolitan dialect for auntie. And Honey Boy, she used to call me. And that's the picture, I don't know if you could see that, of my parents' wedding.
Yeah, I see that.
1934. My father worked in a fish store. They worked in factories. The Gates, the Buffetts, the Bezos, the Musks, the Zuckerbergs, but couldn't come close to what these people look like. Yeah. The way they used to dress, the style. You look at the pictures of what during the Great Depression and people online looking for food. Look at the way they're dressed. Look at the style this country used to have. And now it's turned to crap.
That's right.
People dress like crap, look like crap, and eat crap. Oh, don't believe me? What does the president eat? Going to McDonald's.
Yeah. Joel, when you're talking about that, I thought about you when Sean Duffy was lecturing everybody just before the holidays saying, have some respect. The way people are dressing when they get on a plane, it's like, shut up. I mean, you're the one who's forcing us to take off all of our clothes to get on a plane. You're the one who's taking away all of our self-respect, our freedom, our dignity. You know, those things are tied together. B.F. Skinner understood that. He wrote a book called Beyond Freedom and Dignity, and it was about psychological manipulation. That's what they've been doing to us. They want to destroy our dignity so they can destroy our freedom.
Exactly. I hate traveling anymore.
Yeah.
I don't want traveling. Again, before I forget, you talked about ICE and how much their budget is. Who created it?
I don't know. Who created ICE? I don't know.
Homeland Security?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Is that part of Homeland Security? But yeah.
Little George Bush. After 9/11.
That's right.
Yep. And 90% of the people swallowed the crap coming out of that little boy with a pair of cojones smaller than a mothball. Yes, any at all. We're going to get that guy Osama bin Laden. Get him.
Did you see what Kristi Noem did this week? She had a press conference there at Homeland Security, and they had on the podium, one of ours, all of theirs. And everybody pointed out, well, you know, that's kind of the motto of the Nazis when they wiped out that city in Czechoslovakia after the assassination of Heydrich. And, you know, it's amazing. They're just right in your face about this stuff.
Man, look what they did. 90% of the people, they stole how many trillions of dollars to kill the couple 100,000 Afghan people?
Yeah.
What's the longest war in American history that nobody talks about? The slime, they have weapons of mass destruction and ties to Al-Qaeda in Iraq. Total lie.
Yeah.
People bought it.
And, you know, Trump said it was a lie, didn't he? You know, when he was running for president. And then when he becomes president, he takes the woman who did the torture, who covered up for the torture, and then sold the lie in Washington, Gina Haspel. He made her the head of the CIA.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing. It is really amazing.
I say, it's a freak show, and the freaks are running the show.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's going to be an interesting year, as the Chinese say, you know, it may live in interesting times or whatever. The crisis and opportunity, that is danger and opportunity. That's really the definition of crisis, isn't it? I think it's going to be a crisis year.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's already in front of us.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it seems like it's already been a year and it's just a couple of weeks into it. It's moving really, really fast.
And again, if you want the Trends Journal, we have our top trends, 12 of them for 2026, and they're coming true already.
Yeah.
And so if you want to read history before it happens, and again, you go to night, you put that link in there. It's the grand total of $2.50 a week, pennies a day.
Yeah. Is there anything, I kind of drove this in terms of the economy and war, but any other trends that we didn't talk about that you see on the head coming up? You said 12 different trends.
One of them that people aren't talking about is this techitis. The young people are totally messed up with this, and it's only going to get worse. Little infants, on their things, and human spirit is being lost, and we have to change.
I agree. Yeah. And, it's like an inflammation, isn't it?
Yeah.
It really is. I like that techitis. That's a good description of it. Yeah.
And again, unfortunately, it's going to be also off with their heads 2.0. You're going to see a lot more revolutions going on around the world. Again, the rich own everything. And again, you look at the data from Oxfam, how rich they got when they locked down the world.
Yeah.
Billionaires got trillions and trillions of dollars richer as we all went down.
Yeah.
And again, who's that guy that had Twitter? What was that guy?
Jack Dorsey.
Yep. He was one of the first to lock down. He was supposed to go to South Africa. They were the first to lock down, the geeks. And boy, did their business boom when they started to Zoom. How everything changed. Their businesses boomed.
Yeah.
Lockdowns. They were the first ones to lock down. And everybody forgets the data. We wrote about it as it happened. You know where COVID landed first?
Where's that?
Kirkland, Washington, at a nursing home.
Yeah.
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 At a nursing home. Kirkland, Washington. Oh, and again, remember Seattle was booming back then? And how much your office vacancy rate there? And how about San Francisco? Yeah. You left your heart in San Francisco? You better not have any money. They're going to steal it from you. Look what a crap hole it's turned into.
Yeah.
The geeks did it. Look at them. A guy said they got this wrong in the King James Bible when they said the meek shall inherit the earth. The geeks have inherited the earth.
Yeah. Yeah, this year, I predict, a lot of people predicted that Musk will become the first trillionaire. He's not too far away from it already, and he's got a big stock offering that's going to be coming out with SpaceX.
Yep.
And I imagine that'll put him over the top.
Not a penny for peace.
That's right.
Hey, remember, we didn't see each other since Christmas time. Where were all these religions that talked about the Prince of Peace?
Yeah.
Oh, he had a Christmas sale still. All right, I forgot. Okay. All right.
Yeah. They don't call it Black Friday for nothing. It's like a black mass, It's.
I want White Friday.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you so much, Gerald. It's always great to talk to you, and let's hope that that something changes. But certainly the trends are. You're right on top. The trends are looking bad, but it's something that we need to keep an eye on for our own purposes. And about one of the few things that we can do, I think, is to try to protect ourselves and what little wealth we've got in terms of trying to get into gold as much as we can. That's about the only play that's left for the little guy, I think, isn't it?
Well, again, we don't give financial advice, but the little guys, that's why you're seeing silver prices spike.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
They call that the poor man's gold. That's another reason it's driving it up.
That's right. Yeah. Even in India, I mean, they were able to buy massive quantities of silver, so much that they created shortages with that. So thank you so much, Gerald. And let's hope that maybe things will turn in a different way. But hope is not a strategy, is it? It's we can certainly
taking the word in the metaphysical dictionary because it wants something to happen without doing anything to make it happen.
Yeah, that's right.
So
yeah.
Please do what you can do in a positive way.
Yeah.
And best shape you can, physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
Spiritually, especially. Yeah.
Authority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority, keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men, said Samuel Adams. And I'm on that trip.
That's right. And it is really the spiritual foundation that we have lost, wanting to have this happen. And of course, our connection to God. Thank you so much, Gerald. And thank you for coming on. It's always great talking to you. And it's been too long since we've talked. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. And thank you for all that you're doing.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Well, that's it for our broadcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. And remember, you can get 10% off with the code NIGHT at trendsjournal.com. And this is 1 year you want to keep up with the trends. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a good weekend. The Common Man. They created Common Core to dumb down our children. They created Common Pass to track and control us. Their Commons Project to make sure the commoners own nothing. And the communist future. They see the common man as simple, unsophisticated, ordinary. But each of us has worth and dignity created in the image of God. That is what we have in common. That is what they want to take away. Their most powerful weapons are isolation, deception, intimidation. They desire to know everything about us while they hide everything from us. It's time to turn that around and expose what they want to hide. Please share the information and links you'll find at thedavidknightshow.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. If you can't support us financially, please keep us in your prayers. thedavidknightshow.com.